A guard's secret report reaches Kate. Charlotte's name changes everything. It was an ordinary morning when Kate received the letter. The envelope, neatly folded and sealed with an unfamiliar insignia, sat on her doorstep. The first thing that caught her eye was the weight of the letter. It wasn't the usual light paper, but rather something heavier, as though it carried secrets. Kate had always lived a quiet life, one that never strayed far from her daily routine. Yet the moment her eyes landed on that letter, something told her that today would be different. She hesitated before picking it up, as though it were something fragile, something delicate. The seal on the envelope was unfamiliar, a dark wax with an emblem she didn't recognize. It was intricately designed, almost royal, but Kate had no connections to anyone of that caliber. Her family, though respected in the town, were far from influential. Still, curiosity pulled her forward, and she tore the envelope open with a mix of caution and anticipation. Inside, there was no ordinary correspondence. Instead, she found a thick report, its contents written in sharp, meticulous handwriting. The first sentence caught her off guard. "This report is to be delivered directly to Kate Lawson by order of the Royal Guard." Kate felt her heart skip a beat. The Royal Guard? What could they possibly want with her? She had never been involved in anything royal. She was simply Kate Lawson, a local schoolteacher, known by a handful of people for her quiet demeanor and her love for books. But this letter, this report, was about to pull her into a world she never imagined. She sat down at the small wooden table in her kitchen, the report spread before her. The first few lines were formal, explaining the nature of the report and its importance. The tone was serious, urgent even, but it was the name that appeared in the middle of the document that truly stopped her in her tracks. The name was Charlotte. Kate stared at the name for what felt like an eternity. Charlotte. Why did it seem so familiar? It wasn't a name that held any significance in her life, yet something about it made her pulse quicken. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it. The report continued, detailing a figure who had once been part of the royal court, someone whose presence was key to an old royal mystery. Kate's eyes moved rapidly across the words, her fingers gripping the edges of the paper as if to steady herself. The report spoke of a secret long hidden, something that had been kept from the public for decades. The mention of Charlotte was more than just a name. It was a key to unlocking something buried deep within the history of the kingdom. But what could Charlotte have to do with her? Kate had no royal ties, no family members connected to the court. She was just an ordinary woman. So why did the Royal Guard have a report for her, and why was Charlotte's name part of it? The report mentioned a secret heirloom, something that had been lost to history, only to resurface under mysterious circumstances. Kate's curiosity grew as the words continued to describe this heirloom, which was tied directly to Charlotte. The heirloom, it seemed, had the power to change the fate of the kingdom itself. But why was Kate being dragged into this? Why had she, a mere teacher, been chosen to receive this letter? As she read on, a deeper realization began to settle in. There were rumors, whispers in the town about lost royal treasures and hidden legacies. Kate had never put much stock in those tales. They seemed like nothing more than the fanciful imaginings of the townsfolk. But this report was different. It wasn't a rumor. It was real, and it was asking for her help. Or perhaps it was calling her into something far greater than she could have ever anticipated. The letter described how Charlotte had been a key figure in a royal scandal, a scandal that was erased from public memory. Her role, once pivotal, had been buried under layers of secrecy, and the truth had been carefully guarded for years. Kate felt her pulse quicken as she understood the gravity of the situation. This was no ordinary report. It was a summons. At that moment, Kate's mind raced with questions. Who was Charlotte, really? And why had she been erased from history? The report hinted at connections to Kate's own family, something she hadn't considered before. Could it be that her own bloodline was somehow tied to the royal family? The idea seemed absurd, but the more she thought about it, the more it began to make sense. Perhaps her family had once been part of something far larger than she knew. But then the fear began to creep in. If the Royal Guard had chosen her to receive this information, it meant something important was at stake. Something dangerous, perhaps. Kate had always prided herself on living a simple, uneventful life. But now she was caught in something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. She looked down at the letter, then back at the report. The name Charlotte echoed in her mind. It was a name that would forever change her life, whether she liked it or not. As she folded the report and placed it in her bag, a decision had already begun to form in her mind. She couldn't ignore this. She couldn't walk away. Something told her that the answers she sought were within her reach, and whatever it took, she was determined to find them. But where would she start? The report mentioned a meeting, a contact who could provide more information. Kate knew she had to act fast. If the Royal Guard had sent this to her, it meant time was of the essence, and so, with determination, she made up her mind. She would follow the trail. She would uncover the truth behind Charlotte's name, and in doing so, perhaps uncover the secrets of her own past. As Kate closed the door behind her and stepped out into the cool morning air, she couldn't help but feel that everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, and her future had just been turned upside down. The name Charlotte had changed everything. Kate couldn't shake the name Charlotte from her mind. It echoed through her thoughts like a whisper she couldn't quite reach. As she paced around her small house, the details of the letter and report danced before her eyes. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became. Why had this Charlotte been erased from history, and why did her name feel so significant to Kate? She had to know more. The first thing Kate did was search for any record of Charlotte. She went through old family heirlooms, books, and even tried digging through the town archives. However, it was like Charlotte had never existed. There were no birth certificates, no mentions in old newspapers, nothing at all. The town where Kate grew up was full of stories, some true, some not, but no one had ever spoken of Charlotte. Determined to find out more, Kate decided to visit the local historian, Mrs. Wilkins. The elderly woman had lived in the town all her life and knew its history better than anyone. If there was anyone who could provide some insight, it was her. Mrs. Wilkins' small cottage was tucked away at the edge of town, surrounded by an overgrown garden. Kate knocked on the weathered door, and after a moment it creaked open. Mrs. Wilkins greeted Kate with a warm smile, though her eyes seemed to hold a trace of suspicion. "Come in, Kate. It's rare to see young people around here these days. What brings you by, Mrs. Wilkins asked, her voice soft and welcoming. Kate explained the situation, telling the older woman about the mysterious report she had received and the name Charlotte. Mrs. Wilkins' eyes narrowed slightly as she listened. When Kate finished, there was a long silence before Mrs. Wilkins spoke. "I've heard that name before, though it's been a long time," she said softly, as if she were speaking more to herself than to Kate. "Charlotte was a name tied to a great secret, one that no one talks about now. But I suppose you deserve to know, seeing as how the Royal Guard has taken interest in you." Kate's heart raced. "What secret? Why does Charlotte's name matter?" Mrs. Wilkins motioned for Kate to sit down. "Charlotte was once part of the royal family, though most people don't know that. She wasn't just anyone. She was an heir to a lost throne. Her existence was a threat to the power of those in charge, so her story was hidden, erased. It was a dangerous time, and for those who wanted to keep control, keeping Charlotte's identity a secret was essential." Kate's mind swirled with this revelation. Charlotte had been royalty. How was that possible? Kate had grown up in a family that had never been anything but humble. Her mother had been a seamstress, and her father had been a carpenter. Neither of them had ever mentioned anything about royalty. She had always thought of her ancestors as simple folk. "But why would the Royal Guard send this report to me? What's my connection to Charlotte?" Kate asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. Mrs. Wilkins looked at Kate with a knowing gaze. "That's the question, isn't it? The report you received is just the beginning. You see, Charlotte wasn't the only one with ties to the royal bloodline. There's a possibility, though it's hard to believe, that you are somehow linked to her, perhaps in a way that you can't even imagine." Kate felt her heart skip a beat. Could it be true? Could she have royal blood running through her veins? She had always felt like there was something more to her life than what she had been told. There were pieces of the puzzle that never quite fit, and now it seemed like everything was falling into place. "But why would they hide it? Why not tell the truth?" Kate asked, leaning forward. Mrs. Wilkins sighed deeply, her eyes filled with regret. "It was about power. You see, those who held power in the royal court didn't want anyone else to challenge them. Charlotte was a threat to their rule, and so they erased her existence. They wanted to make sure that no one would ever find out the truth about her. But now, all these years later, the truth is starting to come to light. And it's not just Charlotte's identity that's at stake, it's the entire history of this kingdom." Kate absorbed this information, feeling the weight of it settling in her chest. The more she learned, the more questions she had. What was the heirloom the report mentioned? How could Charlotte's name possibly connect to Kate's family, and why now, after all these years, was the royal guard sending her this secret report? I need to find out more, Kate said, standing up abruptly. I have to know what's going on. This isn't just some random mistake. Mrs. Wilkins nodded, understanding the urgency in Kate's voice. You're right to want answers, Kate, but be careful. Some truths are dangerous, and once you start digging, there may be no turning back. People will want to stop you. Kate nodded, her resolve hardening. She was ready for whatever came next. The thought of uncovering the truth, of finding out who Charlotte really was and how her family fit into this story, filled Kate with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. She knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but she also knew it was one she had to follow. Mrs. Wilkins handed Kate a small leather-bound book from a shelf nearby. This might help you, she said quietly. It's an old journal. It belonged to someone who knew Charlotte well, back before she vanished from history. It might not give you all the answers, but it will give you a glimpse into her life. And sometimes, a glimpse is enough. Kate took the book, her fingers tracing the worn cover. It felt heavier than it looked, and as she opened it, the pages seemed to hum with untold stories. She thanked Mrs. Wilkins and left the cottage, her mind racing. As she walked back to her house, the weight of the book in her bag felt symbolic, like she was carrying a piece of the past, one that would unlock answers to a mystery much bigger than herself. She couldn't wait to dive into the journal, but at the same time, a part of her felt the gravity of the journey she was about to embark on. This was no longer just about Charlotte's secret. It was about her own life and the deeper connections she was beginning to uncover. She didn't know it yet, but this journey would not only change her understanding of her family, but also her place in the world. As the sun began to set behind the hills, Kate couldn't help but feel that everything was about to change. The pieces were slowly falling into place, and she was determined to figure out how they fit together. Charlotte's name, once just an enigma, was now a door to a much larger story, a story that was hers to uncover. The following days felt like a blur to Kate. She couldn't remember the last time she had felt so focused, so determined. Every moment of her waking hours was consumed with thoughts of Charlotte and the mystery surrounding her. The journal Mrs. Wilkins had given her was filled with cryptic entries, but with each page she turned, Kate felt like she was peeling back layers of history, layers that had been buried for far too long. The journal was written by a woman named Eliza, who had served as a lady-in-waiting at the royal court. Eliza's words were careful, almost as if she feared someone might read them, but there were enough details for Kate to piece together a picture of Charlotte's life. From what Kate could understand, Charlotte had been born into the royal family, but her existence had always been a secret. Eliza wrote of a young woman who was intelligent, kind, and fiercely independent. But in a time when royal bloodlines were everything, Charlotte was seen as a threat to those who held power. As Kate read through the journal, she learned that Charlotte had been involved in a political scheme that was meant to change the course of the kingdom's future. But something went wrong. Charlotte had disappeared from the court, and the royal family had made sure that no one would ever remember her. The journal hinted at an heirloom, something so valuable that its existence had been hidden, locked away in a place only a few knew of. Kate's mind raced with questions. What was this heirloom? Was it real? And why had the royal guard sent her the report, tying Charlotte's name to her own family? Was there some connection between her ancestors and Charlotte that no one had ever spoken of? One evening, as she sat in her small living room, the journal spread out before her, Kate felt a sudden urge to visit the royal estate. It wasn't far from where she lived, just a few miles outside the town. She had heard rumors over the years about the estate being abandoned, but the estate was also surrounded by secrets. If there was any chance of finding more information about Charlotte or the heirloom, Kate knew she had to go. It felt like the next step in her journey, though she had no idea what she might uncover. The next morning, Kate set out. The road to the estate was winding and overgrown, the trees casting long shadows over the path. The estate, though once magnificent, now looked like a forgotten relic. The stone walls were crumbling, ivy crawling up the sides, and the windows were boarded up. Yet there was something about the place that felt alive, as though it still held a pulse deep within its walls. Kate approached the large iron gates that guarded the estate. They were locked, but the chain that held them was rusted, and the lock looked easy enough to break. With a glance around to make sure no one was watching, she stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. She had no idea what she was hoping to find, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. She pulled the chain loose, the rusted metal scraping as it gave way. The gates creaked open and Kate stepped through. As she walked closer to the estate, she felt a chill run down her spine. The silence was overwhelming. There were no birds singing, no rustle of wind in the trees. It was as though the place had been abandoned for decades, and in a way it had been. Kate's footsteps echoed as she made her way toward the entrance. The door, though once grand, was now hanging crookedly on its hinges. She pushed it open, the sound of creaking wood filling the air, and stepped inside. The grand hall that greeted her was covered in dust, the furniture covered with sheets, and the paintings on the walls faded with age. But there was still something beautiful about the place, a quiet beauty that seemed to speak of its once glorious past. Kate's eyes moved over the room, searching for anything that might give her a clue. She walked deeper into the estate, her footsteps soft on the old wooden floors. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and old stone. She had never been in this part of the estate before, but something felt oddly familiar, as if she had been here in another time. As she turned a corner, she came across a set of stairs leading down into a basement. The door at the top of the stairs was old, the wood dark and weathered, but there was no lock. It was as though someone had left it open on purpose. She hesitated for a moment, but her curiosity got the better of her, and she descended into the darkness. The basement was cold, the air heavy with the scent of earth and stone. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she saw shelves lined with old crates and boxes. Dust floated in the air, and the faint sound of dripping water echoed in the distance. Kate's heart pounded in her chest as she carefully moved deeper into the room. It was then that she saw it, a chest, old and worn, sitting in the far corner of the basement. It was locked, but the keyhole looked familiar, like the ones described in the journal. Could this be it? The heirloom Charlotte had hidden away? The thought sent a jolt of excitement through Kate. She moved closer, her fingers trembling as she tried to pry open the chest. It didn't take long before she managed to loosen the latch, and with a deep breath she opened it. Inside there was a velvet-lined box, and inside that box, something so beautiful, so unexpected, that Kate could hardly believe her eyes. It was a necklace made of intricate silver, with a large gemstone at the center. The stone shimmered in the dim light, casting small glimmers of color on the walls of the basement. The necklace was unlike anything Kate had ever seen. It felt ancient, but at the same time it had a certain modern elegance to it, as if it had been designed for someone who belonged to a different time. Kate picked it up carefully, her fingers brushing against the cool surface of the stone. She felt a strange connection to it, as if it were calling out to her. She knew deep down that this was the heirloom mentioned in the journal, a piece of Charlotte's hidden legacy. The realization hit her hard. The royal guard had sent her here for a reason. She wasn't just meant to uncover the truth about Charlotte. She was meant to find this heirloom. And now that she had, everything was about to change. But what did it mean? Why had it been hidden here in this forgotten estate, so far from the eyes of the world? The answers were beginning to take shape, but Kate knew that the more she uncovered, the more dangerous the journey would become. There was no turning back now. Kate held the necklace in her hands, her mind racing with possibilities. She had the heirloom. But now she needed to figure out what to do with it, and what role she was meant to play in the story of Charlotte, the royal family, and the kingdom's forgotten past. One thing was certain: the journey she had started was far from over, and the truth was just beginning to unfold. With the heirloom in her hands, Kate felt both a sense of awe and fear. The necklace, with its shimmering stone, seemed to carry a weight far beyond its size. She couldn't explain it, but as soon as she touched it, she felt an undeniable connection, not just to the object itself, but to Charlotte, the mysterious figure whose name had been haunting her. This necklace, buried deep within the forgotten estate, had to be the key to unlocking the mysteries she had been chasing. Kate carefully placed the necklace into her bag, her heart still racing from the discovery. The journey to this point had been a winding one, filled with questions and hidden truths, and now it seemed as though the answers were within her grasp. But she knew that this discovery wasn't the end. It was just another beginning. What did this heirloom truly represent? Was it just a symbol of Charlotte's lost royal heritage, or was it something more? As Kate made her way out of the basement and back into the fading light of the day, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. The estate was still eerily silent, as though it were watching her, knowing the truth she had just uncovered. She could feel its presence, like an ancient force trying to guide her steps. She left the estate with a deep sense of purpose. The heirloom, now safely hidden in her bag, felt heavier with every step she took. It was as if the stone itself was alive, pulsing with energy, calling her to a destiny she hadn't yet understood. The road back to her town was quiet, and for the first time in days, Kate let her thoughts wander. The pieces of the puzzle were falling into place: Charlotte, the royal family, the missing heirloom. But there was still so much she didn't know. The more she thought about the heirloom, the more she realized that its importance wasn't just about the past. It was about the present and the future. The royal guard had clearly gone to great lengths to keep it hidden, and now Kate was holding it. That meant she was tied to something much bigger than herself. The question was, what was she supposed to do with it? By the time she returned home, night had fallen and the town was peaceful, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Kate sat down at her kitchen table, staring at the necklace that had so suddenly become the center of her life. She couldn't keep it hidden forever. Someone would notice it was gone. Someone would come looking for it. And when they did, they would come for her too. As her mind raced with the possibilities, there was a knock at the door. It was a soft knock, but Kate's heart jumped in her chest. Who could it be at this hour? She walked cautiously toward the door and opened it, half expecting to find someone from the royal guard standing there. Instead, she was met by a familiar face, Mrs. Wilkins. The elderly historian looked more serious than Kate had ever seen her. Her face, usually kind and gentle, was now etched with worry. Kate stepped aside to let her in. "Mrs. Wilkins, what are you doing here?" Kate asked, her voice tinged with concern. "It's late." "I know," Mrs. Wilkins replied, her voice low and urgent. "But we don't have much time. The truth you've uncovered, it's bigger than we thought. There are people looking for that necklace, Kate, people who will stop at nothing to get it back." Kate's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean? Who are these people?" Mrs. Wilkins closed the door behind her, her eyes darting around the room as if she feared someone might be watching. She lowered her voice. "The people who erased Charlotte's existence, they're still around. They've been hiding in the shadows for years, manipulating history, making sure the truth never sees the light of day. But now that you've found the heirloom, the danger is very real. They'll come for you, Kate." Kate's mind reeled. This wasn't just a story of lost royal bloodlines. It was a story of power, corruption, and deception, a story that had been kept hidden for generations. The royal guard, the estate, Charlotte, the heirloom, it all tied into something much darker than Kate had imagined. She hadn't just uncovered a piece of history, she had uncovered a conspiracy. "What do we do?" Kate asked, her voice shaking. She didn't know what to believe anymore. Everything she had thought she knew about her life, about her family, was being called into question. "How do I protect myself?" Mrs. Wilkins took a deep breath, her face grim. "You have to understand something, Kate. This isn't just about the necklace, it's about what it represents. Charlotte wasn't just any member of the royal family. She was meant to lead, to rule. Her bloodline was powerful, so powerful that those in control feared it. They couldn't let her rise to the throne, so they erased her from history. And now, the heirs of those who buried Charlotte's truth are still watching, still waiting for someone to find it. They've been watching you ever since you received that letter." Kate felt her heart sink. She had always thought of her life as quiet, simple, just a small-town woman with a love for history and books. But now everything had changed. She wasn't just part of a quiet life. She was part of something much bigger, something that would determine the future of a kingdom she had never imagined she was connected to. "What do we do now?" Kate asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do I fight this, Mrs. Wilkins looked at her with a mix of pity and resolve. "You don't have to fight it alone, Kate. You have allies. There are others who still believe in the truth, who want to see the monarchy restored to what it was meant to be. But they are few and they are scattered. You need to find them. You need to learn what you can, and you need to stay one step ahead of those who want to stop you." Kate nodded, trying to steady her breathing. Her entire world had just been turned upside down. What had started as a simple mystery had transformed into something much more dangerous. The heirloom, Charlotte's legacy, the royal guard, it was all connected, and now Kate was at the center of it. "I'm scared," Kate admitted, her voice trembling. "What if I can't do this, Mrs. Wilkins placed a reassuring hand on Kate's shoulder. "You've already taken the first step, Kate. You found the heirloom, you've discovered the truth. Now you just need to trust yourself. Trust that you're capable of more than you realize." Kate took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside her. She had been thrust into a world she didn't understand, but she couldn't back down. The truth was out there, and now it was her responsibility to uncover it, to protect it, and to ensure that Charlotte's legacy wasn't erased once again. As Mrs. Wilkins left, Kate stared at the necklace once more, the stone catching the light. It was beautiful, but it was also a symbol of everything that had been hidden for so long. And now it was in her hands. Kate knew that whatever came next, she couldn't go back. The truth was out there, and it was up to her to bring it into the light. Kate woke up the next morning feeling both determined and overwhelmed. The necklace lay beside her on the bedside table, a constant reminder of how drastically her life had changed in just a few short days. Her mind raced with thoughts of what Mrs. Wilkins had said. The truth was far more dangerous than she had imagined, and the people who sought to stop her were already on her trail. For the first time since she had received the letter from the Royal Guard, Kate felt the weight of her responsibility. She was no longer just a teacher in a small town. She was holding a piece of history, something so valuable that it could change the course of her life, and perhaps even the future of the kingdom. But the more she thought about it, the more questions arose. What was she supposed to do next? How could she protect herself from those who wanted the heirloom back? How could she trust anyone when she wasn't even sure who she could turn to for help? She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't sit idly by. If the heirloom was truly the key to Charlotte's legacy, then it was up to her to unlock its secrets. She had to keep moving forward, no matter how dangerous it might be. Kate spent the next few days preparing for whatever lay ahead. She couldn't stay in her small house forever. If anyone was watching, they would eventually find her. She needed to leave town, but where would she go? Mrs. Wilkins had mentioned allies, people who still believed in the truth of Charlotte's story, but Kate had no idea where to find them. She couldn't risk making herself a target by reaching out to the wrong person. She thought back to the journal, the entries written by Eliza. There had to be a clue hidden within those pages, something she had missed the first time she read through them. Kate sat down with the journal again, carefully flipping through the pages. She had already read most of it, but perhaps she hadn't paid enough attention to the details. As she reread one of the final entries, a phrase stood out. "The heirloom is meant for those who can see beyond the veil of history. Only the worthy can claim it." Kate's heart skipped a beat. What did that mean? Was there some kind of test she had to pass in order to understand the full power of the necklace? She couldn't help but wonder what worthy really meant. Was she the one who was supposed to unlock Charlotte's legacy, or was there someone else, someone who had been waiting all this time to claim the heirloom? There was no time to waste. Kate needed answers, and she needed them quickly. She couldn't keep hiding in the shadows. She had to confront the truth, no matter how dangerous it might be. That night, as she sat in her kitchen, deep in thought, there was another knock on the door. Her heart skipped a beat, but this time she wasn't afraid. She had grown used to the unexpected visitors. She opened the door to find a young man standing in front of her. He looked like he had been on the road for some time, his clothes dirty and his face weary. "I'm looking for Kate Lawson," he said, his voice low and urgent. "That's me," Kate replied, narrowing her eyes. "Who are you?" "My name is Thomas," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "I've come to help you. I know about the heirloom." Kate felt a jolt of surprise. How could he know about it? She hadn't told anyone, not even Mrs. Wilkins. "How do you know about it?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "There's no time to explain everything right now," Thomas said, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "But I can tell you this, you're not alone. There are others who have been watching the Royal Guard, and they've been trying to protect the heirloom for years. We've been waiting for someone who could carry the legacy forward, and I believe that person is you, Kate." Kate stared at him, her mind spinning. She didn't know whether to trust him, but something about the way he spoke made her believe him. The urgency in his voice, the look in his eyes, it was clear that he was sincere. "Come inside," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "You've got a lot to explain." Once they were seated, Thomas began to tell Kate his story. He explained that he had been part of a secret group that had been monitoring the Royal Guard for years. They had been searching for someone worthy to carry on Charlotte's legacy. Someone who could uncover the truth about what had happened to her and restore the royal bloodline that had been erased from history. "Charlotte's legacy is more than just a piece of jewelry," Thomas explained. It's about the kingdom, about restoring the balance of power. For generations, those who controlled the throne have kept the truth hidden. But now, the time has come for the truth to be revealed. You're the key, Kate. You've always been the key. Kate was stunned. She had never imagined that she would be part of something so much bigger than herself. She had thought of herself as just an ordinary woman, but now she was being told that she had a role to play in the future of an entire kingdom. "What do I do now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Thomas looked at her with determination in his eyes. "Now we find the truth. We go to the places where the royal guard has hidden the records, the places where the answers lie. You have the heirloom, but there's more to this story. We need to uncover the full truth, about Charlotte, about the bloodline, and about the power that has been kept secret for so long." Kate nodded, a new sense of purpose filling her. She was no longer just running from danger. She was now part of something much greater, a movement that sought to restore a legacy that had been buried for centuries. Over the next few days, Kate and Thomas worked together to uncover more clues. They traveled to hidden locations, dug through ancient records, and met with others who had been part of the secret group. With each step, they got closer to the truth. But the royal guard was always a step behind. Kate could feel their presence watching from the shadows. They weren't going to give up easily, and the closer Kate got to the truth, the more dangerous the path became. Kate knew that her life would never be the same. She had made a choice to uncover the truth, and now she was on a path that would lead her to face those who had kept the kingdom's history hidden for so long. The heirloom, Charlotte's legacy, it was all in her hands now. As Kate stood at the edge of this new chapter, she realized that the journey was far from over. The truth was within reach, but it would take everything she had to bring it into the light. The stakes were higher than ever, and the world she knew would never be the same again. But Kate was ready. She wasn't just a small-town teacher anymore. She was the keeper of a secret that could change everything, and no matter what dangers lay ahead, she would fight to uncover the truth.